Return to work is a hot topic since the pandemic left employees scrambling to set up home offices. And 3 years later, the name of the game is flexibility. Many workers are looking for hybrid or remote jobs, but there's a new study out from Deloitte that found some drawbacks to remote work, especially for women. Here with more on that is one of the authors of the report. We have Emma Codd, a Deloitte Global Inclusion Leader. Emma, it's good to see you here. So let's talk about some of the challenges, because I think a lot of people right now want that flexibility. What are some of the drawbacks to hybrid work?
So just to set the context, the research was 5,000 women across 10 countries. Amazing similarities in the responses that we got when we look at this at a global level. We focused really on women's everyday experiences, which include flexible and hybrid working. From a hybrid working perspective, last year, the data was really stark, very extreme. And I think that reflects the fact that we had gone back into the workplace. For many of us, we were still in a bit of a perfect storm of everything that was going on in our lives. And from a hybrid perspective, 60% of women said they were excluded when working in a hybrid way. Excluded in the workplace. So the age-old situation of you dial into a meeting, everyone else is in the room. It's not deliberate exclusion, but you may feel that way. So that was last year. This year, that number is down. So that number is now around 40%. That's still 4 in 10 women. So there are drawbacks to it. Women from a hybrid working perspective are telling us they're not getting enough access to senior leaders. Around 3 in 10 women saying, I need this access for sponsorship. It's really important. And yet, it's not quite working yet. And then we saw productivity, impacting issues like predictability. Women really want, everyone wants predictability. Women want predictability, flexibility. And then I think the final thing on hybrid is the messaging, the employer that says, it's down to you, do what you want. And then the underlying messaging is, no, we expect you to be here. So from a hybrid perspective, challenges, but I think, we've seen improvement. It's an improving picture, but it's challenging.
You talk about the exclusion factor, but when you don't study men, how do you know this is a gender issue and not simply a remote issue?
And it could be. And look, we were doing a piece of research on women's views in the workplace, and therefore we did go out to women. And we went out, we've looked through an intersectional lens. So we've looked, from women in underrepresented groups and seen some interesting findings there as well. I think if we take flexible working, everybody wants to work flexibly. Our millennials and Gen Z research that we published, around this time last year, very clear that that's an expectation. So I'm not saying this is definitely not an issue for men as well. But with women, what we do know, and what the research tells us, is women hold the majority of the caregiving responsibilities still. Okay. Now, whether we like that or not, that is the data, and that's a lot of data telling us that. So for women, often when you're working in a hybrid way, many women have to stay at home. They have less of a choice in it. That's where the challenges come. I think, there is not so much the optionality there for them. They need predictability, and frequently they find themselves at home. That's where the exclusion becomes a problem.
Emma, what does this do then to burnout? Because a lot of people who want the flexibility, want that hybrid work situation, it kind of blurs the lines of when they are expected to respond. They're expected to respond sometimes at all times.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. The burnout numbers, again, improved from last year. Terrible last year, still pretty bad this year. Around 30% of women telling us they're burnt out. And the mental health data is very poor. So we've got women feeling more stressed, and actually women saying, I don't feel comfortable accessing support in my workplace. They feel less comfortable than last year. I feel less comfortable talking about mental health and disclosing it. That's really concerning. Whatever is going on there in the background, the picture is worse. And then the trouble is when you've got this always on number where it's like, I feel like I need to always be there. I need to be checking my emails. I need to know what's going on. And that leads to burnout. And we know that. And those mental health pieces of data are challenging, deeply concerning, that so many women, only a quarter of women feel that they would disclose if they have to take time off for mental health reasons.
And I know, hearing from a lot of women, they also feel like they always have to be available for their kids when they're also working at home. So they also have to keep the phone on in case the school calls, etc. Conclusions, what needs to be fixed? Is it from the employer level, and what should be done?
What needs to be fixed? I can tell you, the women do not need to be fixed. big thing, okay? Not that I'm suggesting that you think that women need to be fixed, but the women absolutely don't need to be fixed. And I think that's too many organisations embark on what I call a fix the women approach. Look at structures.
But in terms of this dynamic, in terms of supporting women that are working remotely, what can we do to fix the issue?
Inclusive leadership, predictability. Don't, make sure if you're having a hybrid meeting, make sure everyone knows where the majority of people are going to be. Make sure that people know in advance. I think as a leader, make sure that your expectations, that you're very clear that I expect you to be around for a particular time. I do not expect you to always be on. And then I think the final thing for me is, as leaders, inclusive leaders, at treating everybody with the utmost respect at all times. And if we do that, we will get a lot right.
Comes down to good management and transparency, it sounds like. All right, Emma Codd, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.